at the minute, I've just started writing a resource, which I'm really excited about, which is called Deconstructing Word Questions for Children in Year 6. The aim is to show children the deep structure of different worded questions, a skill that they find so difficult. Break it down coherently in steps, get children seeing visual representations matching to worded questions, looking initially at knocking down the challenge of the number range that children are given to highlight that deep structure, and then coherently build so all children have greater success on that, as opposed to just giving children difficult worded problems where they have maybe too lower initial success. So I'm going to show you part of this task family and how hopefully it coherently builds those skills. The work that we're going to have a look at is for an individual child who we'll name Ruby. To start off with, there are a few examples, and here are just some of them from the worked example that build up to answering fractions of quantity questions. So, for example, Ben had £24, then he spent 2/3 of his money on a t-shirt. How much money did Ben have left? And we see the structure of the bar model, and what we're coming to see is actually we're not asked for 2/3 of 24 if we just skim the information from the question, and that helps us to see that. And then another example where actually 24 isn't even the whole. There are 24 right-handed children in the class. 3/4 of the children in the class are right-handed. How many children are there in the class? Seeing that we've got 4/4, 3/4 right-handed, 1/4 left-handed, and what I'm asked for is the number of children in the class. Now, having been exposed to this, the children then go on to looking at reading questions, not actually being required to do any calculation, and then trying to figure out which of the bar models or which picture represents the question. And again, we're working in a relatively straightforward number range, and it's really understanding that deep structure. Feel free, of course, to pause the video here and look in more detail. But then we progress, and the task build-up goes to the next phase of examples, which include lots like this one where we're challenged to spot the mistake. So in this instance, Connor spent 1/3 of his money on a bag. Connor's bag cost £12, and it's trying to get the children to see. In this instance, Ruby could, that 12 isn't the whole amount. I'm not after a third of 12, because 12 is the cost of the bag, which is 1/3. And then we see the correct example. And that leads in, again, to then children matching the question to the bar model. And one thing, if you look carefully, that you'll notice about the questions and the bar models is they all involve 4/4. In the question, we're either asked, it involves either 3/4 or 1/4 as one of the quantities, and they all involve 60 or £60. But then children have to see it all these different ways around. So they aren't required to do the calculation. They're just required to match the question to the bar model and see that deep structure. Then again, there are further build-up examples. In this instance, looking at the same structures, but not in a fraction of quantity context always, but to see that the questions can have the same underlying structure. So 3 tickets for the show cost £36. How much does it cost to buy 2 tickets for the show? And again, discerning between the correct and the incorrect bar model, and making those connections. And then again, this leads into these specific focus tasks. In this instance, task C, where again, Ruby looks at the bar model, looks at the worded questions, and has to think, does the bar model represent the worded question? Now, some of the worded questions involve fractions of quantities and some don't. But what we're seeing is these questions follow the same underlying structure, and to think which are and which aren't represented by the bar model, and to be able to explain the mistakes. Now that leads into task D. Now, at the outset, I would say that Ruby would have already been confident at calculating, for example, 2/5 of 30 and 3/5 of 30, but would then struggle to discern between those different context questions. And it was that build-up that led to this success. What, of course, you don't see is then the pictures that she drew to unpick this. This task family actually then goes on to progress to look at questions where one step involves finding a fraction of an amount, but different kinds of multi-step questions. but again, following this pattern of focusing children's thinking on specific aspects of breaking down that problem. And then again, at the end, a really rich challenge. If you want to get this resource, so I'm talking now right at the end of March 2022, I'm going to put on my mailing list these resources out again with others that I'll produce that will be ready probably after Easter. So if you'd be interested in getting that, sign up to the mailing list. And I'm hoping to then create that resource somewhere near the back end of 2022. So teachers have this amazing bank of resources to coherently build children's ability to break down different kinds of word questions.